we are focusing on the Atlanta Falcons. Had Bo Morgan of 92.9 The Game in Atlanta on, PJ, and he didn't hesitate. I asked simple over-under on the 9.5 wins. He says over. Some people may look at that and say, oh, yeah, the guy who works for the Falcons radio network likes the over. Surprise, surprise. But the books like the over. Minus 140 at BetMGM on over 9.5. Minus 120 to win the NFC South. When you look at the division, when you look at the division and the schedule, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, it opens up tough. Steelers at home, at Philly on a Monday night, and then Kansas City visits on a Sunday night. But after that, man, they are favored in 13 of their 17 games, PJ, ranked far and away the softest schedule in the league. Whether you want to base it on last year's record, whether you want to base it on this year's win totals, the Falcons' schedule sets up, especially in the final 6 or 7 weeks, for them to make a run if they've found some rhythm with Zach Robinson at OC, Kirk Cousins at quarterback, and this new look offense.
Chris, I don't know what to do with the Falcons this year, man. There are teams that I feel strongly about, whether I like the over under on their win total. Atlanta's just they're not one of those teams for me. I don't know. We got a new quarterback, obviously, and Kirk Cousins coming into a new situation. We got Raheem Morris, who, again, talking with Bo, he's been in the Falcons organization before, but has not been the head coach. So bringing him back into Atlanta, what's that going to look like in year one? And teams like the Falcons, just as an organization, I mean, when you haven't had much success and you are the clear favorite and you have the easiest schedule and it just all looks too easy, it's when I get nervous. That's why I asked the question of Bo. I was like, what do you think of this division? Like, is Atlanta just going to kind of win it just because, just because there's not a believer? I am down on Tampa this year. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I think the Baker Mayfield regression is coming. I don't think they're going to be good at all. The New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen and Derek Carr, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. As crazy as it is to say, if I were to make a bet in this division, I think Carolina might be the play, as crazy as it is. Every year in the NFL, we always have a team that goes from worst in the division to first in the division. And I think a lot of people would agree that this might be the division where that would be the candidate. Carolina cannot be any worse than they possibly were last year. I think Dave Canales is going to do a great job. You look at his track record, what he did with Geno Smith in Seattle, what he did with Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa. I mean, quarterbacks have quick turnarounds under him. And, Carolina made some nice moves in the offseason. I thought they drafted pretty decently. For me, Chris, it's like it just feels too easy with Atlanta. And maybe it is just that easy with all the talent they have on offense. And then Raheem Morris now is your head coach. The defense should be better. I don't know, man. For me, it's like I'm trying to make a case for another team. I don't like New Orleans. I don't like Tampa. And I just look at the Carolina Panthers, and I'm like, maybe the Panthers will surprise some people this year. So I like the under the win total on Atlanta at 9.5. I think they're probably going to be an 8 or 9 win team. Maybe that's enough to win this division, but I'm down on the Falcons this year. I just think there's so much hype and excitement around this team. And the Atlanta Falcons as an organization is just not a franchise I want to buy in on when there's expectations there.
I'll say it again today. I hate to put too much stock in the schedule in May, June, and July. But when you look at it, there are so many opportunities for Atlanta to start building momentum, if not carrying momentum through the back half of the season. Again, first 3 weeks, that's not easy. Steelers come to town, you go to Philly, and then you host the Chiefs. But you get out to week 6, and they've got 3 very early division games on their schedule, weeks 4, 5, and 6, Saints and Bucks at home, and then at the Panthers in Charlotte. And then Seattle at home, at Tampa. Okay, those 2 games could go either way. Dallas at home. Obviously, they're not. I don't think, although who knows what the Cowboys look like at that point. I don't think they'll be favored in that one. It could be short home favorites, maybe. Saints again, and Bo Morgan from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta just talked about how much everybody in Atlanta gets up for the trip to New Orleans and games against the Saints. And then here's the back third, right? At Denver, And then a bye the week before Thanksgiving. Okay, the Chargers come to town. That could be tough. Justin Herbert, if he's healthy. At Minnesota, who could be in J.J. McCarthy territory by then. And here's the final 4 weeks, PJ, for the Atlanta Falcons. How's this murderer's row? The Raiders, the Giants, the Commanders, and then the Panthers at home. They could get to week 15, say, I don't know, what would we call it? I'm trying to think, 6-7, and still win the division. Just how different is this offense going to look this year as compared to the Arthur Smith era?
Oh, I mean, 100% different. You even look at the receivers. I mean, go back and look at the receivers that Arthur Smith was bringing in. They were all big-bodied guys that want to block. And not that, I'm not criticizing Darnell Mooney's blocking, but he's not the prototypical Arthur Smith receiver. It's going to look way different. I mean, I had a chance to talk with Zach Robinson and a lot of the things that was supposed to be off the record. But the things I can tell you is some of the, it's going to bring back more of a Kyle Shanahan feel when he was here. Look, I always go back to I always saw Arthur Smith try to do what his personnel was. And so he tried to base what he did around that. 2021, Kyle Pitts was a 1,000-yard receiver. Matt Ryan was slinging the ball, and you were more of a seemingly more pass-first offense, even though it was as balanced as they could be. And the last 2 years has been completely opposite. I think this is going to be a lot of quick-hitting stuff. That's why you got Darnell Mooney. You're going to want to get some of these guys in space. Kyle Pitts, to me, might be the secret of this whole offense, because I think if he is back to that level of 2021, saying he's healthy, and he has a guy like Kirk Cousins, I think it opens up Bijan Robinson. I think it opens up Darnell Mooney. I think it opens up Drake London. It opens up some of these, the Rondell Moore. What could he be? And it opens up the run game as well. I mean, everything is going to be based off each other. But Drake London, I think if I can actually maybe answer the question in a long-winded answer, Drake London said we're going to be a fast-paced offense. And everyone that heard that said, well, your defense better be good if you're going to be running that kind of hurry-up style. I'm not sure that's what he meant. I think Drake London meant, if you go back and watch his first 2 years there, it was two-man route. What'd you say? 9 tight ends, your max protect, 2-man routes, right? It's going to be the quick hitches, the quick hits, the crossing routes, the little shallow drags that get guys open quick and at the line of scrimmage, and then you let them eat. You let them run. That's wall you brought in Darnell Mooney. That's why honestly, why Terry Fontenot and I think Arthur Smith drafted Bijan Robinson is he's a guy that you get the ball in space in the passing game. He makes people miss in a phone book. And, oh, by the way, he's got home run speed. I know everyone says we are the worst division in football, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but, we could just be the most competitive division in football. And I say that laughing, but I think it's Tampa and Atlanta, and I'm excited to be Tampa and Atlanta because they're, Carolina and Tampa, they're rivals, but New Orleans is the one we hate. So we're going to be in New Orleans like we always are, and hopefully we're so much better than them this year we get to beat them twice. I hate splitting with that team, but I do love – there's nothing sweeter, guys, than winning in New Orleans.
Bo Morgan, 92.9 the game in Atlanta. Before we let you run, real quick, simple over or under, 9.5 wins. We only got like 25 seconds.
Over. 10 wins is the key to winning this division. Over.
Bijan Robinson, 20-1 for Offensive Player of the Year is a long shot number. But what's more interesting to me is his rushing yardage prop, which is dead on what he did last year. At least at BetMGM, the number is 975.5. He had 976 yards rushing last year, PJ. He also had 4 rushing touchdowns, the number a little bit higher this year at 6.5 touchdowns. I have to believe that even if this offense is more pass-heavy under Zach Robinson than it was under Arthur Smith, that Bijan Robinson is going to be more of a focal point of this offense than he was last year when there were weeks where you go, did Arthur Smith forget that Bijan Robinson is available? You'd see him standing on the sidelines. You'd want to shake Arthur Smith through the TV screen and say, Art, put him in. He's Bijan Robinson. He's dynamic. He can do anything with the ball. but especially running the ball, I don't see a lot of other options in their backfield. 6.5 touchdowns may be a touch high for me, but it feels like this is the year he hits 1,000 on the ground, and they really start. 1,000 on the ground is not what it used to be, and yes, he's going to be dynamic catching the ball out of the backfield as well. 86 targets last year, but I think they really lean into his ability to run the ball this year.
I mean, Bijan is he's the perfect running back for what you want this day and age and the way that offenses are trending with how good of a running back he is, but also how great of a receiver that he is. And I think being in an offense like Zach Robinson, who's obviously comes from the Sean McVay coaching tree, I mean, all the different ways that they're going to, look at the success that running backs have had under Sean McVay, right? Obviously, Todd Gurley when he was in his prime, what Kyron Williams is doing right now for the Rams. It's a great system for backs, and I think Bijan is just going to excel in that system. So, I mean, like you said, Chris, we just watched so many Falcons games, and I mean, we get these glimpses of Bijan just doing special things, and they'd, go away from him, and you're like, Desmond Ridder is your quarterback. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Did you see what the Titans would do for years when Derrick Henry was their running back and they had no option at quarterback? You give the ball to your best player. Feed the man, exactly. So I think we're finally going to get that out of Atlanta. And what giving the ball to Bijan is going to do is it's going to open everything up. I mean, people forget, what a sick talent and freak that Kyle Pitts is. Drake London is awesome. So I mean, they got all the weapons, man. And they got a pretty underrated offensive line, too, to block for Cousins also. So that offense should be really good. I think Bijan's going to have a great year. And shout out to our guy, Brian Gertz, who brought up an awesome point with that soft schedule to finish. I mean, if you're a fantasy football player, Bijan could absolutely tear it up for you in the playoffs as well.
Bijan, Pitts, Drake London, interestingly enough, his season-long player props, the same exact numbers receiving as Bijan has rushing at BetMGM. 975.5 receiving yards, 6.5 touchdowns. I think he goes over both of those numbers. I think you're going to see Zach Robinson really lean in to that QB wide receiver one relationship that hopefully they're able to build between Cousins and London.